Run number 2 start list, a reflection of their finish orders in the opening heat. Tanitska will open things up. You have 4 Americans, 4 Germans, 4 Italians, and 4 Russians in today's field, as they will count them down to the final 3. USA's Ashley Farquharson in her top 10 position, her first of the season. Britcher third, Taubitz second, and Geisenberger first after run number 1. But don't count out the Austrian and the Russian, Egla and Katnikova, as they're knocking on the door of the podium. Welcome back to the second run of Women's World Cup Luge from Innsbruck. Tim Singer along with Gordy Shear. And Gordy, on course now, the young 17-year-old from Ukraine, Yuliana Tanitska.
Quite an accomplishment to be competing at this level at age 17. I think back personally where I was at 17, and I definitely would not be at this point. So very impressive. You know, no Junior World Cup this year, so it's a great opportunity for her to get some experience at the World Cup level.
This is curve 10. It shoots the athletes down to the lower portion of this track, a labyrinth, which I believe every track in the world must have a labyrinth, right, Gordy?
It is a required element.
To the finish in a time of 40.567. That's some 1600s faster than her first run time, although she's quick to criticize her effort there, which is a good sign for a 17-year-old. Not all smiles, but somewhat analytical.
Yeah, you like to see someone who's tough on themselves, not someone who beats the heck out of themselves, but someone who has a good, honest eye when viewing their performance.
1 down, 27 to go. No major crashes in run number 1. Everyone received a finish time.
Interesting to see how quiet it is down here at the finish.
Starter number 2 wears bib number 3. That's because she was the third off of the start in run number 1. Poland's Klaudia Domorodska. Temperatures warmed up a little bit here. The air temperature now at 33 degrees, just above freezing on both the Fahrenheit and Celsius scales. 28 is the ice temperature, and it's been good ice all weekend long, Gordy.
Yeah, that's a good temperature for the athletes. It's nice and drivable, but not so soft that it's slow and not fun. If it gets too warm, sometimes, you know, a lot of athletes just would prefer some nice harder ice. It's a little faster. It's just more fun.
We can do a little social media in the first few sleds only this morning. So if you've got questions, comments, observations, or criticisms, find us on Twitter at Luge Announcer. You can also email us luge.announcer@gmail.com. In the green the entire way, Poland out ahead of Ukraine. Domorodska 121.23 per 2-run combined time.
The whistling sled, I love it. It means that she's catching air somewhere, so it's not ideal from a aerodynamic standpoint, but
from a musical standpoint it is.
It's something to listen to.
It's a steep uphill finish curve here. No relay this weekend. There is a sprint competition to follow. First place for Klaudia Domorodska. And Gordy, one of the surprises of run number 1, for me at least, was the performance of the Italians. And by performance, I mean poor performance. Vötter is in the top 10 in 7th place. But then you have Hofer coming up now, shortly to be followed by Zugler and Oberhofer, 26th, 24th, and 23rd place.
I'm not sure that's reflective of their skill as athletes. That was a really nice start ramp. She pulled off, paddled, settled, the sled moved over to the right, and then she drove that start curve with a nice smooth take on. So I really don't think that their performance today is indicative of where they should be. You know, sled setups are so finicky, especially on a track like this. A beautiful exit of curve 9, perfect into curve 10. So I think that, you know, maybe a little more speed at the start eventually, but, you know, this is These are very, very beautiful lines being driven down this course.
Much improved at 40.248, which is about a quarter of a second faster than her opening run. In fact, all 4 Italian women finished in the top 16 at the opening race here in Eagles in November. So quite a drop-off here.
Yeah, perhaps the coaches went back at their setups and took a second look, and maybe we'll see some improvements in the second heat from the Italian team.
One Italian down, the next getting ready at the top, Nina Zugler, who, as we mentioned during run number 1, Zugler very slow at the start, very fast at the finish is where she finds her time. So, Gordy, what exactly are the rules of sled preparation? You can, obviously, based on what you just said, you can finagle between runs, but is there a clock? Do you have to have it all ready at some point before the race starts?
Well, preparing the runners is really critical, and when you work on runners between heats, you're generating temperature. You know, a lot of sandpaper, perhaps even files involved, depending, or changing steel runners. But if you're working the steel, which is sometimes the case, then that's generating heat in the runners, and you have to be super careful. But if it's a case of just changing angles, then it's less of an issue.
Lower portion of this track now. This is the exit of curve 9. Done very well by Nina Zugler, though she continues to trail her teammate Hoffa.
Yeah, some issues up at the top involving the start curve. Not perfect. Entering the Kreisel curve 8.
It will go on balance as Zugler's poorest performance of the season, as she's going to be hard-pressed to crack the top 24 or so today. A bit of a surprise on a track that really amounts to be her home track.
Yeah, it just could have turned that sled a little bit more going into the start curve. And then this is going into curve 8. A little bit late, as we say, or too far on the right. Just a hair.
So quiet, as you alluded to, Gordy, down here at the bottom. No reason to dilly-dally. She'll just walk to that truck and back up top. Well, you can't mistake those Romanian uniforms. Red, yellow, and blue. Raluca Strămăturaru getting ready, sealing that shield. This is her 14th year as a World Cup competitor. Raluca, a 7th place finisher at the Olympic Games.
The veteran slider on this World Cup tour for women.
Yeah, go ahead, Gordy, sorry.
Well, no, I was going to say, really a great driver, and had her great result in Pyeongchang at the games in 2018. But, you know, she really working with her coach at the time, Duncan Kennedy. They really had a great partnership going, and Duncan has now moved on to the Canadian team, former U.S. athlete as well.
Indeed. Raluca was peaking that year, so the 7th was really pleasant. It wasn't a shock if it was maybe a little surprise, but she's fallen off the last couple of years. Really, she's been frustrated trying to find that magic again, somewhat as evidenced right there. 12 hundredths behind young Verena Hoffa.
This is the exit of curve 9. A very nice line. I think Hoffer just had a good run, not so much that Raluca had a bad run.
Strămăturaru of Romania. So Verena Hoffa of Italy has the lead at the bottom right there. But standing over Hoffa is the next competitor, Marion Oberhofer. You get it, Gordy? I think that translates to Overhofer. So Marion, 20 years old from Maranza, a suburb of Brixen, the city in South Tyrol. 1 hour south of here in Innsbruck, across the Brenner Pass.
nice start. The Italian team actually has a start training facility in Moronson, and they've been making good use of that with their new start coach,
Tatiana Hübner.
Yeah, of German luge team fame.
Their start times have been incredible. Doubles, men and women. I believe the Americans spent last summer, before the 2019 summer, before the pandemic, training in Moronson.
They did. They spent quite a lot of time. This is going to be close here at the bottom, Tim.
0.07 of a second separating the two Italians right now as Verena Hofer continues to lead the way. Very early going, just 6 sleds here in run number 2 from Innsbruck.
This is such a critical part of the track, and that was nicely done. If you make a mistake up there in that start curve, it is just really, can be really, really painful in terms of your finish time.
The Italians littering the leaderboard, not that they'd want to all be appearing this early in run number 2, but that's the way it is, and they'll just hope to move up several spots. Here's the lone Canadian on the World Cup circuit this year, qualifying for the national team, is Caroline Maxwell. Carolyn, in fact, not Caroline, so to correct myself. I was corrected last week on that. 21 years old, she'll turn in June. She's from Calgary.
Nice through the start curve. Definitely a rebuilding period for the Canadian team right now, with the exception of the doubles team of Walker and Smith. A lot of young blood right now, and it doesn't help that the Canadians, along with the U.S. team, did not compete in the first half of the year. A little trouble out of curve 9.
She went over to that far wall out of 9. I think a good goal for the Canadian program, Gordy, will be to put it all together next week in Königssee and maybe have a top 5 in the relay. And that doubles team that you mentioned could spearhead that effort.
I agree, definitely.
Maxwell in 3rd place at the moment, 79 thousandths of a second behind the leader, Verena Hofer of Italy.
Carrying a little too much height at the exit of curve 9 sends her over to her left. She stays cool and calm. Doesn't really cause any major problems for her, just bleeding a little bit of time.
It's a great look at the very wide finish curve that's right in front of the new modern restaurant that was built about 6 years ago here in Innsbruck, actually about 10 years ago now. Our first Russian getting ready to go now. This is Ekaterina Baturina, 28 years old, from Krasnoyarsk. A 2-time Olympian, finished 11th in Sochi on her home track. Followed that up with a top 15 at the Pyeongchang Games. 4 hard paddles. She was not too fast at the start in run number 1. And once again, she's giving up some time, which is very un-Russian-like.
Yeah, today it's been very un-Russian-like for the women. Sort of like the Italians, just back a little bit. Got to believe it's a setup issue at this point.
Long World Cup career for Baturina. This is her 10th season, although she has never placed in the top 10 in the World Cup overall standings. Twice she's been 11th. And Verena Hofer's run is looking better and better. I mean, we mentioned it was a quarter of a second faster than her first heat, so she cleaned it up totally.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm sure she's probably wishing she had two runs that were like that. You can see her right foot is very low as she's driving. She should probably pick that up a little bit. She'll get more leverage, pushing down and across the runner to drive the sled.
Baturina's day is done. as she sets her sights on the World Championships in Koenigsegg. Verena Hofer of Italy continues to lead the way, and in 20th place after run number 1, Switzerland's Nathalie Maag, 23 years old, from Wemmerhausen. And I do not know of a single athlete in this sport that isn't excited to be heading to Switzerland for the final World Cup race in 2 weeks at the beautiful track in St. Moritz, Switzerland.
That's such a great track, and a little bit different every year. I wonder how many of these athletes have even slid there. I think it's been, 9 years since the circuit's been there, Tim?
Exactly, 2012, although some of the young athletes did participate in the Youth Olympics there last year.
Yeah, and when it's built right, it's like sliding on the track and like luge as you would imagine when you were a 5-year-old kid.
40.315, the second fastest run of the heat, but more than enough cushion for Nathalie Maag to stay out in front of Hofer and protect her spot in the top 20.
See the bumps in the track. We're talking about St. Moritz. St. Moritz is famous when it's built right. It feels like there are no bumps in the track. It really is. It's that mile-long ice sculpture that when it's built right, it's a phenomenon.
Nathalie Maag of Switzerland has taken an early lead here as we continue on in 19th place after run number 1. Latvia's Ulla Zerna. Gordy, this is just one of the more spectacular locations to stage any winter sporting event here in the Tyrolean Alps.
Absolutely beautiful. It's a pleasure to race at this track. It's a relatively easy track in terms of getting down, but you get off of that sled and you just look around and it's just truly spectacular.
Zerna, the first of the Latvians. She had a 12th place finish at the Olympic Games in Pyeongchang in 2018. When not luging, she is a clothing designer. She owns her own line of clothing, Ooh La La Clothing, and I know several of the athletes have purchased from her.
That was a nice looking run.
1:20.505, the 2-run combined time as Ulla Zerna takes over the lead, holding her spot. She was 19th after the first run.
See those spiked gloves digging into the ice, accelerating the sled. She drifted a little bit to the right too much, perhaps, a little bit more than she would have wanted. She wasn't able to get an effective, maybe she was going to take another paddle, I don't know. But the rest of the run was very clean, nice looking, smooth, not a lot of skidding. I didn't hear any extraneous noise, which is a good sign.
Ulla Zerna out in front. All of the top runners will be going last, traditionally, as is the case in most World Cup sports. They go from worst to first. And Ulla Zerna out in front, the first of 4 Americans in today's competition getting ready at the start. This is Sergeant Emily Sweeney of the United States Army, 27 years old, now calling Saranac Lake, New York, her home. Sweeney, a world championship medalist from 2 years ago in Winterberg, Germany.
You can hear her teammates cheering her on. She had an issue in the start at the first run. She cleaned it up. That was really, really nicely done. Drifting over to the left wall, entering curve 8, which is the Kreisel. Pardon me, curve 7, which is the Kreisel. Here is the entrance of curve 8. These are very nice looking lines so far. She's driving a good race up to this point.
That World Championship medal was such a great comeback after what was a wicked crash the year before at the Olympic Games, where she broke bones in both her neck and her back.
Yeah, Emily is definitely a fighter, and this is a good run.
40.068 here in run number 2. That's about a quarter of a second faster than her first run. It could be one of those what ifs. She had put two together, but she still has a chance here for the top 15, Gordy.
I would say so. This is the run that, as you said, she could have had. A little bit, as I said, a little bit to the left going into the Kreisel, but that's okay. If you can make a nice smooth entrance into curve 7, then it doesn't really matter. It's all about being smooth, not cutting ice, and minimizing the distance.
Emily Sweeney, one-time World Cup race winner. Very part-time action this year as the United States missed the first 4 races, staying in North America, and Emily has just competed once prior to this week. Now here's Latvia's Alina Vitola, 17th after run number 1. 3 very modest paddles, I would call those.
Yeah, she didn't lean forward and put her weight into those paddles. You'd like to see an athlete lean farther forward and make sure that you have as much time on the ice with your hands as possible so you can maximize efficiency and really accelerate that sled. She's already losing time to Emily Sweeney.
Although that said, she has posted the fastest start time so far in run number 2.
Don't listen to me.
No. But I was the one that said modest. But you pointed out it's that second split that's much more significant.
That is true.
Second place time of 40.157, second overall, as Emily Sweeney gets a little love in the leader box for at least one more sled.
Entrance into the start curve. You don't want to see ice shooting up as you enter onto the start corner, and cutting that angle is really critical so that it takes on nice and smooth. Exit of curve 9, good shot at the aerodynamic position of the athlete on the sled. Sled actually broke out a little bit into a skid into the finish curve.
Latvians are without their head coach this week, Martin Zerbenis. American Emily Sweeney continues to lead the way, but Gordy, it'll be interesting to see if she can hang on, because I think it's safe to say that each of the next 3 to come down underperformed in run number 1. Lisa Schulte, who has had top 6 finishes here in Innsbruck. Ivanova of Russia next, then Hanna Prak.
That's definitely a fair assessment. And Schulte sliding on her home track is going to be tough. Home ice advantage is very important in this sport, perhaps more so than in any other sport. You've been through every possible scenario that you can imagine on the ice, and when you have that comfort, it really makes a difference in how you slide and your confidence level going into each corner.
Trailing the American by 0.2 of a second, now in the lower labyrinth section of this track, shooting out of curve number 10. Actually, that was the finish curve. Sorry about that. 120.608 for Lisa Schulte. And Gordy, she's the athlete counterpoint of my announcers. She is a luger in the winter and equestrian during the summer.
Those are two seemingly different sports in terms of what it takes to be successful, I would think, but very interesting.
Strength, agility, and you've got to be one with what you're sitting on top of.
Those are the similarities. See her head buried, not looking. She's trying to optimize aerodynamic position and airflow on the sled.
Tatiana, Ivanova, Rosenthal. Track is clear.
With American Emily Sweeney continuing to lead down at the bottom, here is 2-time race winner this season from Russia, Tatiana Ivanova. 16 career wins on the World Cup puts Ivanova in second place on the all-time active list, well behind Natalie Geisenberger.
Aggressive start from Ivanova. She, in the past, has been known for, being definitely among the top starters. She still is, but Seems like she's dropped back a little bit, or the rest of the field has gotten stronger and caught up to her. But regardless, she's still a great slider. Losing a little bit of time to Sweeney here. I think that speaks actually more to the strength of Emily's run and not so much to the weakness of this run, because it's looking pretty good. It's going to be real close at the bottom here.
But in fact, as she takes over the lead down at the bottom, Eagles has been a bit of a mystery for Ivanova, who's had by far her poorest results on this Innsbruck track over the past couple of years. In fact, top 7 every race but the opener here in Eagles, where she was 20th.
This is the 270-degree Kreisel turn, curve 7 on the track. This is curve 8 entry, and we're one curve down here in curve 9. That was a really beautiful exit. I think she made a lot of time right there at that exit.
Olympic silver medalist Tatiana Ivanova, part of the Russian team relay silver winning team in 2014 in Sochi. She has the lead. There's Marcus Prock, a 10-time World Cup overall champion, 3-time Olympic medalist, now the sport director of this Austrian program. He looks with greater interest to the top. One of his athletes, one of his family, daughter Hanna Prock, 14th place after run number 1.
Leaning forward, trying to get as much speed as possible. Start is the only place you can generate speed. The rest of the course down, you're just trying to be as smooth as possible and carry speed. You're not actually generating speed. You're working with gravity to make the sled go fast for you.
Trailing Ivanova by a 1/10 of a second, Prock has the ability to find additional speed down below. Let's see if it'll work here out of curve 10.
This labyrinth is all about finding rhythm. These 3 little touch turns into the uphill finish chord.
And she falls back 3 spots. A disappointing home race for Hanna Prock, who has earned World Cup podiums. Meantime, Emily Sweeney moves into the sprint competition a little later today, guaranteeing a top 15 placing.
See those bumps going into the start curve. Smooth entry. Nice lines through the Kreisel turn. You want to see no ice being thrown up from the runners as you exit curve 9. If you can do smoothly out of curve 9, there's a tremendous amount of speed to be gained for the lower labyrinth section of the track.
Russia's Tatiana Ivanova has the lead. Last season, she moved from 13th place into the win in run number 2 of a World Cup race. Now it's Cheyanne Rosenthal. And Gordy, one of the great parts about being a German luger is you have all of the equipment, you have the facilities, you have the coaching. But one of the toughest parts about being a German luger is it's not that easy to stay on the national team.
The Germans really have an amazing system of developing athletes. They have 4 tracks, and essentially those 4 tracks almost act like farm teams for the national team. And even once you're on the team, it's not like they're one unified team. There's a lot of divisions within the team by design, and it makes them all super competitive with each other. Just to make the team is a huge honor.
And Rosenthal probably needed a top 7 or 8 finish today to make the World Championship roster for next week. It's not going to happen, as she'll end up somewhere in that 13th, 14th place spot. Nonetheless, she does race for the first time in 4 weeks, and we may see her again in 2 weeks in St. Moritz, Switzerland.
Interesting to note the foot position. The feet are the first thing that come into contact with the wind. So having those toes pointed and making sure there's optimal airflow over the body is extremely important to find those tenths, hundredths, and thousandths of a second that you need to be successful in luge.
Tatiana Ivanova of Russia leading the way here in Innsbruck, Austria. Run number 2 continues with the second of 4 from the USA. 22-year-old Brittany Arndt. Her hometown is Park City, Utah. Part-time student, but among these losers, Gordy, who isn't a part-time student?
Yeah, especially with online learning now, it's really become the norm for most of the athletes, at least on the U.S. team. Looking for Brittany to perhaps gain a little time down at the bottom here. That would be consistent with her sliding style. But I think a lot of athletes in front of her have had good runs, so it's gonna be a challenge for her. Not one that she isn't up to, though.
12th place after run number 1. That equals her best 2-run finish of the year. She also finished 12th in Königssee, Germany, to open up 2021. Up around the finish, dropping 3 spots, in fact, behind teammate Emily Sweeney. So right now it's Russia, Germany, USA, Latvia, the top 5, with the final 11 still to come.
This is going into the Kreisel very close to that left wall. I don't know if she hit it. Perhaps she did and lost a little bit of time. But not a bad race for Brittany. One of the younger athletes for USA Luge. See the sled running nicely between curves 9 and 10.
Getting some words of wisdom from USA head coach Robert Feig in his first year with the senior national team for the United States. Now the next of our Latvians, Alica Teruma. She's an Olympic silver medalist as part of Latvia's team relay performance at the 2014 Olympics in Sochi. Alica last year won her first ever World Cup race. That was in Winterberg, Germany.
I'm really liking what I've been seeing from the Latvian program. Great sliding, great skills, great coaching staff, and their sleds are really running nicely.
And great tradition. Over the years when there was a Soviet Union powerhouse program in the sliding sports, most of those greats were from the Republic of Latvia.
This is a nice looking run. No drama.
None whatsoever,
Oh.
other than that green turning red in the final few meters. And that cost her. That's how tight the racing is here. She held the lead most of the way. She's still just 500ths out of first, but in 4th place.
That was a surprise, I'll be perfectly honest. I'm struggling to see where she might have lost the time.
So it's Ivanova of Russia leading Rosenthal of Germany and Sweeney of the United States. Those are the top 3 with the final 10 still to come.
A little bit of ice cut out of curve 9, so she perhaps lost some time there.
Beautiful day in Innsbruck, Austria, as the temperature's hovering just above the freezing mark on a sunny afternoon in the Tyrolean Alps. Victoria Demchenko coming off of a podium last weekend, the race in Oberhof. Demchenko in 10th place after the first heat. This is the venue that has hosted 3 Olympics. Not many can make that claim, Gordy. It's a trick question. Can you name the 3 Olympics?
Well, not off the top of my head, but I will say that Victoria had some issues right there at the start, and it's not going to help her in her bid to stay in front of her teammate. You really want to see, if you're going to drift at all when the sled settles, you want to go to the right, not to the left like Victoria just did.
She's cleaned it up down at the bottom here and still staying in the green, as the Russians may have reworked these sleds between runs because they were a lot slower in run number 1.
This is going to be close.
And she hangs on by 1,000th of a second. That is as close as it gets in any winter sport. Luge timed to the 1,000th of a second, and just 1,000 separate these 2 Russians. All right, Gordy, here's your answer. 1964 Olympics, 1976 Olympics, and the 2012 debut Youth Olympics were all staged in Innsbruck.
Yeah, I wouldn't have got that. Boy, that is just playing with fire right there on the start. She did a great job to recover, though. I mean, that was better than a great job. That was a solid save right there. Most athletes, I think, would have had a lot of height and skidded up in the start curve and then come down and perhaps hit one of those walls, either left or right, coming out of the start curve.
Russia sitting 1-2 in the standings now as we get set for the final 8. Victoria Demchenko out in front, and the track has been cleared for Ashley Farquharson, the third of 4 Americans in today's race, 21 years old from Park City, Utah. She opened up her World Cup career, Gordy, on this track November 2019 and was in podium position after the first run before falling back a bit. She did still finish in the top 10, a great debut race.
Great form here in the early part of this track. She's got her head back, which is a way of building speed, reducing air flow over her body. Oh! She had a little bit too much height at the exit of curve 9, had to drop her feet to maintain control of the sled, but still has a 0.05 of a second lead. We'll see if she can hang on to that. It's going to be very, very close down here at the bottom.
Uphill to the finish, Farquharson into the lead. This will be by far her best result of the year, and depending what happens, she could move up a couple of other spots, but no matter what, this will be her second best finish in her still very young World Cup career.
Yeah, Ashley's got to be thrilled with this run. Could have turned the sled a little bit more, but she didn't cut any ice, which is really the key there. And here we see her rising up on the end of curve 9, has to drop her feet to maintain control of the sled. Just carried a little bit too much height at the end, and that gave her a little bit of cross to her left.
3-time USA Norton Junior National Champion, Ashley Farquharson.
Yeah, she's got to be very happy with, obviously she is very happy with her performance, so good for her, Ash. Good for her.
So 1 American on top, 1 still to come in podium position. But here is Latvia's Kendia Apariota, who's tied with Farquharson to the 1,000th of a second after run number 1. Smooth start, not particularly fast, the 8th fastest of the run.
Looked better than her first. And I think that if she can carry this momentum, she should be able to perhaps have a better run. But already back by 100th behind Farquharson.
Kendia had 1 podium this year. That was back in December in Oberhof, her second career podium, part of a sister-brother tandem in the sport of luge. Both very solid. Ooh, she had a big hit there before the finish curve, Gordy.
Her lines were just off in that labyrinth section, those final 3 little left, right, left combinations. Just didn't seem comfortable on the sled and really bled quite a bit of time down there. Good to this point in the track, I think. And go into the big curve 10 from here. And this is the exit of curve 11 into 12 and part 13 here. That's where she hit, just in front of the finish curve, which is curve 14, and skidded and just lost some time there. And Ashley moves up.
Ashley Farquharson leading over Teruma and Apariota. 7 still to come here in Innsbruck. Counting them down to the final few sleds in this World Cup women's competition. This is Andrea Vötter of Italy. 8 times in the top 6 before finally breaking onto a podium late last season. Gordy, I've mentioned this several times over the years, but it's one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. back in 2016 here in Eagles. I was announcing the race with your teammate, Chris Masner. And Andrea, at the start, knocked her shoulder out of its socket and pushed it back in with her other hand before she settled on the sled.
That's just incredible.
That's athletic instinct,
yeah.
right?
Talk about body awareness. This is actually her home track, as it is for the entire Italian team. They live just down the road in South Tyrol. So if she looks comfortable on this track, it's for a reason.
She's staying in the green ahead of the American from start to finish, losing some time down at the bottom, but still enough in the bank to hold on to her spot in the top 7. Andrea Vötter of Italy with the lead, with still 3 Germans, an Austrian, a Russian, and an American to come.
Smooth take on into the start curve. Just looking very, very comfortable here.
Italy's Andrea Vötter in first place, really the lone solid performance by Italy on a day you would have expected to see much better results. Counting them down to the final 6 after run number 1. Here are the medal contenders. First up, Dajana Eitberger. These athletes get a chance to pick their own music that plays in the background when they start the run. And Gordy, Dajana's selection was composed by her partner, Chris Meyer, played by his band. It's a song called Nice to Know.
Wow, that's really cool. What a great story.
And of course, Chris and Dajana will be celebrating the first birthday of their son Levi in just a couple of weeks.
Yeah, bouncing back into this World Cup, this has just been a great performance for Eitberger.
4 podiums, 1 victory in this comeback season, and finding the green down at the bottom. Such a tall athlete.
Building a lot of speed with a smooth, nice-looking run.
The Olympic silver medalist with a 40.031 for the heat, which is better than a 10th faster than her first run. So that's significant and could actually move her up a few spots in the standings.
Definitely found some time in this heat. Well, that is just textbook exit of curve 9. You don't see any ice flying up from underneath her steels. The line from curve 9 into curve 10 is beautiful, and really staying nice and calm down here at the lower section of the course and across the uphill finish line.
Holding up that 1, that's where Dajana stands right now. But she's in good position as she heads to Königssee, Germany next week for the World Championships. So the Olympic silver medalist in women's singles has the lead. And back to the top of the track we go for the Olympic bronze medalist in the team relay, Madeline Egla. She has come on faster than any athlete, any discipline this season, with regular top 5 performances and her first 2 podiums of her career. Very fast here at the start, Gordy.
I would not be surprised to see a good run out of her. Seems like she was a little bit further back than where I was expecting her to be with her first heat. So look for a strong one this time.
All of these losers, 4th, 5th, 6th, Katnikova, Egla, Eitberger, have a chance to overtake American Summer Britcher and get onto the podium. So they'll need to be perfect to do that. Eitberger was. And Egla so far so good, but it's very tight, just 100th of a second up.
Yeah, this is not a perfect run there. She's just a little bit off. She was a little bit off in the upper portion of the track.
Losing it down at the bottom. Of course, some of that is in comparison to her first run time and Eitberger's performance at the same spot on the track. So Egla right now on the outside looking in terms of podium positions, but it will be yet another top 6 for the woman who's ranked 3rd in the World Cup points.
position, the body position on the sled was really good, but the lines were just a little bit off. Really starting right here at the exit of the Kreisel. She goes a little bit late or too far to the right going into curve 8. So right there, she had a little bit too harsh of a take on. And I think that might have been a point that cost her some time for sure. She was looking good from here, but everything you do in this sport counts.
Deanna Eitberger of Germany leading the way. Still 2 more Germans to come, but next we concentrate on the final Russian in today's women's field from Innsbruck, Austria, Ekaterina Katnikova. Now the World Championships will be held next week, not too far from here in Bavaria. And what a surprise it was last year. Katnikova in the shadows of her Russian teammates for so many years, but with steady results, was better than anyone on her home track in Sochi. She's proudly worn this bib for the last 12 months and will at least one more week be considered the defending world champion.
Got a good chance to see the start, and she did a good job of pulling off the handles, settling into her sled, and moving the sled over to the right to have a nice smooth take on to that left-hand start corner. And you can build a ton of time with a good start curve like that.
26-year-old Katnikova out of curve 10 with a 0.06 of a second lead. A little too close for comfort with what we saw Eitberger do down here. But she hangs on, in fact, extending it by another 100th. So Katnikova, a top 4, that will be her best result, not just this year, but since her World Championship gold last year. So a great showing heading into next week's Worlds.
Yeah, this is where I think she gained a tremendous amount of time. See that angle she takes onto the start curve. She merges on nice and smooth, and really a nice job down here in the lower labyrinth where she caught that rhythm, that catch the pocket, exhale, drive out of the curve, catch the pocket, exhale, and drive out. There's really nice opportunity to establish and feel the rhythm of this track.
Russia in the lead, 1 American and 2 Germans still to come. Winding down to the final 3 competitors in this Eberspecher World Cup women's competition. This is American Summer Britcher, poised to give the USA its first podium of the season. She sits in 3rd place after run number 1, 0.03 of a second up on the leader down at the bottom, Katnikova of Russia.
A good start curve for Summer. That was where she might have lost a little bit of time in her first run. As long as we see green, Summer is in the hunt for a medal.
The slightest of greens right now, 43 thousandths of a second, the advantage for the 26-year-old from Glen Rock, Pennsylvania.
Very nice exit of curve 9.
Now she's opening it up, a tenth
here
of
we
a
go.
second. So
This is
Summer
exciting.
Britcher doing what the Summer of years past did so well as she crosses a podium performance. In fact, the fastest run of the 25 sled so far here in heat number 2.
And she is pumped.
By far the biggest moment in this abbreviated season for the USA to date.
Definitely, and that was a great run. Oh, grab your face shield, Summer.
Now let's be clear, Gordy, this is far from a surprise because week in and week out, Summer Britcher doesn't just hope, she expects to be on the podium.
Yeah, and she is a fierce competitor, and if she's not on the podium, she's bummed out. And she did a great job down here in the lower labyrinth. Nice form, she stays nice and cool. And look at her head, is just absolutely buried between curves 13 and 14, just trying to extend every 1,000th of a second that she can out of this run.
Season highlight for Summer Britcher, for USA Luge for that matter, as she has the lead. Now she's climbed the first mountain, but Gordy, there are 2 other very large mountains lurking ahead now. Yulia Taubitz and Natalie Geisenberger. They're 1st and 2nd in the World Cup standings. Together, they've won 6 of the 8 races. First up, Taubitz.
A very nice start from Taubitz. Certainly a force to be reckoned with on this World Cup circuit. Very nice lines, perfect solid position going into the Kreisel.
Taubitz won the first 2 races of this season, which were here in Innsbruck.
Extending her lead by a bit, a little bit of left direction coming out of curve 9. And this is where Summer really seemed to turn on her turbos. But so is Taubitz.
67.8 miles per hour. That's slower speed than the American, but still well enough of a pad. In fact, a faster run. So Taubitz on the podium once again. There's a great battle going between she and Geisenberger to follow for the World Cup overall points title, with just 2 races remaining after this one.
There's that start. She brings the sled over to the right for that smooth transition onto the start curve. Making little adjustments. You can see her moving her feet around to ensure an optimal entrance into curve 6. A little bit of direction. See her bringing it over and making that correction so she has a parallel entry into curve 10, which is what she did right there. And exited curve 10 quite nicely. Made a beautiful save. You see, she's still fighting the sled a little bit, making a correction to keep the sled off that left wall going into curve 11.
The perpetual smile on the face of the defending World Cup champion Julia Taubitz. She has the fastest time. American Summer Britcher has the fastest speed. They're first and second, but one very significant athlete. Coming up now, on course, Natalie Geisenberger, 2-time Olympic champion, 50-time World Cup winner. And this season, Gordy, she followed 7 second-place finishes, finally with a victory last week in Oberhof.
Just an amazing, amazing athlete. What a career she's had. 50 victories and you know, just a contender in any race she enters. And just a solid run. This is just beautiful.
Geisenberger actually has 4 Olympic gold medals when you count the relay efforts, and now she has 2 victories this season after 7 consecutive second-place finishes. No longer a bridesmaid. Geisenberger, a 2-time winner this season. That's career win number 51. Congratulations to Natalie, doing it on a track so close to her home. Incredible.
Really, very much a luge clinic. That is how it's done.
Well, in singles luge, Gordy, it has been a Bavarian party here in Tyrolia with Natalie's victory, Felix Lach, another win for men's singles, and the news only gets better. They're heading home for the World Championship, rescheduled from Whistler to be held on their home track in Königssee, Bavaria next week.
And that's a track that's going to favor the female athletes with a strong start. It's a very flat start ramp, and that plays very much into the strength of that German team.
Geisenberger and Taubitz, the top 2 once again. Britcher, the USA's first podium this season. Great showing for Katnikova in 4th place. All of the usual suspects back at the top of the leaderboard, except for Ivanova, a bit of a surprise in 10th place. All 4 Americans qualify for the sprint competition. They'll join 4 Germans in that final race of the weekend. Well, Gordy, the sun is shining brightly here in Innsbruck and once again on your USA program.